moments of rejoicing and remembering. And I thought there were some choice moments of remembering Joanne and her accomplishments, and everyone would have enjoyed seeing the funeral services. Now, first, today we will be hearing from the Mary and Earl family, from Aunt Melba Lewis and her family, then Ella Caruth and her family, and Aunt Amy Wells and her family. So we will start. Tony is, let's see, where's Tony Earl? And turn the time over to him. Here's Tony up here.
Oh yeah, there's Tony. Hold on, I'm gonna unmute you.
Okay.
So you have to click on the mute button on the bottom left. There you, let's see, nope, not yet. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
perfect.
we can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
You have time.
Thank you. I'm representing my father, the Marion Earl, and also my mother, Lucille Pike Earl. And I believe my father had the fewest descendants, any of his brothers and sisters. There are 33 of us. My brother Johnny and I, and unfortunately Johnny died without having any children. My wonderful wife Grace and I have 5 children, 24 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. And first I'll talk about my parents. They met in Overton, Nevada. They both had contracts to teach at the Moapa Valley School District. Dad had graduated from the University of Utah via Dixie Junior College, and I think some time at the university in Reno. My mother took a different direction. She grew up in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and in a very, very musical family. She had a beautiful alto bass. And so right out of high school, she attended the Juilliard School of Music in New York City and was studying to be an opera singer. I think after 3 years, the money ran out, and she also lost the drive she had to be an opera singer. And so she came back west and graduated from the University of Utah with a music degree. And both mom and dad then had contracts to teach at Moapa Valley High School. My mother, thinking about it, went from New York City to Salt Lake City to Overton and Logandale. But we are glad they did, because she met my dad and they started dating and fell in love and were married in the St. George Temple. My father and mother, neither one enjoyed teaching high school, and my dad decided he wanted to be a lawyer. And with the help of those who were active in Democratic Party circles in Southern Nevada, including my father's father, he got a job at the Capitol Building, United States Capitol Building in Washington, D.C., so he could attend a night school there. And working as a policeman at the Capitol Building was not as dangerous then as it has turned out to be, as we've seen on the television. So mother got a job and dad went to night school. And I think it took dad 4 years. I'm not exactly sure how many years, but maybe 4 or 5 years. Then they moved back to Las Vegas. Now they were unable to have children, and until my mother had a surgery which corrected whatever the problem was. And then I was born in 1937, and my younger brother Johnny was born 2 to 3 years later. they built a nice home on South 9th Street near the first building, and that's where I grew up, church. Mother was active in musical affairs in the community as well as in the church. She served as Stake Relief Society president. My dad was active in the community as well as in the church. He was in Rotary Club, and he really loved the Rotary Club. And he was also on the draft board for many years during the Second World War and the Korean War, as well as later on. Dad served as a Sunday school president and as a counselor in a bishopric, and many years on the High Council. They came and picked me up in Germany after my mission. They got a taste of foreign travel to different countries, and so they then began to do quite a bit of traveling on different cruise lines, and they enjoyed that very much as well. Now I'll talk about Grace and I. We met in Overton as well. Part of one summer, I worked for my cousin Lee Earl on his farm in Moapa, and we held Sunday school down in Overton. So I was in the same Sunday school class as Grace. Grace was born in Ely, but they moved to Overton, and that's where we met. And we were attracted to each other, and we also saw each other at state quarterly conference when we had state conference 4 times a year, and at different youth dance and music festivals. And then during Grace's, after her junior year in high school, her parents moved to Las Vegas. So we were both at Las Vegas High School, and we graduated in 1955. We both attended BYU. I did a major in accounting, and Grace majored in business education and office management. With Grace's encouragement, I put my missionary papers in after 2 years. We had to be 20 years old in those days, and was thrilled when I got a call to West German Mission. And little did I know how hard it was going to be for me to learn the German language. I had 2 wonderful senior companions. The first was perfect for me because he spoke really, really good German and wouldn't let me learn to make mistakes. Second companion was really fine elders in the mission. He taught me so much about how to be a missionary. Well, I served my mission and came home, and that was in 1960, and Grace was still waiting. It was wonderful, and the magic was still there. And so 6 weeks after I got home, we were married in the St. George Temple by Uncle Milton. And Milton had been Grace's bishop for a while. Avoid the draft, I enlisted in the United States Army Reserve, which meant 6 months active duty and 5.5 years active meetings, and was trained to be a military policeman. We returned home. I returned home just before Christmas, and our first son, Brent, had been born while I was away. I worked for a CPA firm, and then we moved to Inglewood, California, so I could in law school at the University of Southern California. After I graduated and passed the bar, I was a deputy public defender for years. That was very challenging. We represented persons who couldn't afford their own attorney, which was just about all the criminal defendants, and on the serious crimes of felony misdemeanors. After 2 years in the public defender office, then I joined my dad and Uncle Rulin at the law firm of Earl and Earl. We have been active in the church all our lives. I've served as a elders quorum president and a counselor in 2 bishoprics and a council, and Grace has served as a counselor in both ward primary and relief presidents and president of both of those auxiliaries. She taught Blazer Scouts for several years and was active in church music. One of the highlights a few years ago, several years ago, was that we were called to be a senior couple missionary in the Germany Leipzig mission. That's in East Germany, which had been behind the Iron Curtain. And we worked in 3 different cities, which was usual. Gotha, which no one's ever heard of, Weimar, and then Berlin, which is pronounced Berlin in German. 5 children, Brent, who lives in Las Vegas with his wife, and he served mission in Northern England. Dallas, who lives in Cedar Hills, Utah, with his wife, and he served a mission in the Philippines on the island of Mindanao, where I understand the church doesn't send missionaries anymore. Our 3rd child is our son, Douglas. He graduated from BYU and the first graduating class from the UNLV Law School. And he and his wife have 4 children as well. Our daughter, Jeanette, came next, and she did not serve a mission, but her husband served a mission in Geneva, Switzerland, Spanish speaking. And they have 4 children and live in Gilbert, Arizona. And last child, our daughter, Becky, and she turned out to be the smartest of all of our children. She graduated from BYU summa cum laude, which means the top 1%. So excuse me for bragging a little bit. She lives in Las Vegas on the same street as our son. She and her husband have 6 children. And that's the story.
Well, thank you ever so much, Tony.
You're welcome.
Great report on the Mary and Earl family and descendants. And we thank you. Very wonderful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks again. And we have all, we all appreciate each other. This experience allows us to keep track of each other. And the Mary and Earl legend lives on very well. You represent the family and Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Earl tribe,
Yes.
group, etc. So thanks again, Tony.
You're
The
welcome.
next presentation will be from the Aunt Melba Lewis and Mary Ann. Let's see.
Johnson.
There's Mary Ann.
Yep.
We're happy to see you, Mary Ann. The time is yours now.
Hold on, I'm going to unmute you. So you need to click on the bottom left. There we go. All right, Karen. I mean, it says Karen at the bottom. I know who you are, Mary.
Okay.
I am so honored to be able to talk about my mom and of course my dad too. There are things that I really know about my mother. She had a strong testimony of the gospel. And she loved her brothers and sisters. She loved her mom and dad and had such respect for them. And she loved her 5 children. And she loved her grandchildren too. I loved my mother with all my heart and miss her still today. My mother had small hands like many of the Earls. Many of my friends said, I have small hands, but not like my mother. And my mother's hands worked constantly. She never just sat. She loved her quilting and she did a lot of that. In fact, she even sold some. And when I found out how much she charged, I said, Mother, there's time. And she's, oh no, I do it because I love it. and gave them away. I one thing about my mother is that she could patch anything. And I know that our grandmother was that way. One time my son, my husband brought a bunch of boys through when they were going on some church activity. And my son said, don't put anything down that has a hole because my grandma will pick it up and patch it for you. And so she was known for that. My mother was born in March 6th in 1900. It was always easy to know her, her date of birth because you could just had to know that. And she loved our dad so much. In Bunkerville, where she was born and raised, she enjoyed her schoolwork so much. I just read her story again when I was preparing this and the things she did. And Tony, I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that Mother did was she loved to dance. And she danced with your dad. And she said, people just watched them. They were just so good. So,
Really? I didn't know
I don't
that.
know if you'd ever heard that story before, but
Oh,
I found it to be really, and my mother did love to dance, and she got dad out, what did we call it, a golden green ball or something, and we have pictures of them dancing. My mother loved to wear hats and gloves. I remember that as a little girl that she did. She loved dressing up and she loved wearing high heels. Grandpa Earl took her to Overton. There was one time when, after they'd built he had bought the land there, and he took her over to clean and to cook for 4 or 5 of her brothers that went over there to work the land. And I feel honored. I got to see Grandma Earl in that little house that they had. I saw Grandpa Earl's desk, which was remarkable to see. And then of course the honey things and one time with Grandma Earl. And then the next time I saw Grandma Earl was when she moved up to Aunt Winona's in St. George. I'm kind of losing where did I? But in Overton, Grandpa took, he did that. And that's where my mother, her handsome sailor. And my dad was a sailor. My dad's family came from Denmark and England and settled in after they joined the church in Salt Lake. And then their bishop, with this large family, thought they should go down to Moapa Valley. And they did. It was a very, very hard life for them, but they all survived and made good livings for themselves. And so my mom met this handsome sailor, as she called him, and they dated. And then my dad came to her and says, I really want to serve a mission. And of course she said to go. So he was gone for 3 years. And when he came back, they started right in dating again and got engaged and were married in the St. George Temple. And my dad was also, many of you know that I was born on Christmas, and it was 1934 when Uncle Robert died, and my dad was one of his counselors, and he became bishop then of Logandale and was bishop for 8 years of my young growing up years, and also a high councilman that went from Kingman, Arizona to Alamo, Nevada. I even went with him once when he went out, drove all the way to Kingman back for an assignment. My dad and mom loved the church and were always so active. They They were the parents of 4 boys and me. And I loved my brother so much. Everybody would say, oh, you got so spoiled. And I always thought, no, I didn't. My brothers loved me, and I knew it, and I loved them. My mother had with the 4 brothers, the 2 older brothers, there was a sister born between those brothers that only lived for 5 days. But mother was able to hold her, and my brothers were able to touch her before she passed away. And her little where she's buried, but the casket that is buried there in Logandale by my parents. That was a sad time for my mom because she loved this. The other sad time was when my brother Joe, he was going to the University of Nevada, and that's when World War II started, and he came home to join, and that was very difficult for my mom to send a son off to the Navy. Just a little thing, my dad was in the Navy, and I had 3 of my 4 brothers were in the Navy too. Joe was the only one that saw active duty out on the Pacific Ocean. And one time he got to come home into San Diego. And so my mother and I got on a bus and we went to San Diego and got to see him. And that's when they had those little tiny turtles. I don't know if anybody else remembers them, but I remembered him buying me 2 little turtles while we were there. And that was a very special time with my mother. It was just so hard for her. And my brothers were all so active in sports. And my mom and dad went to everything that they did in the plays and everything. When you're in a small high school like we had, you participated in everything. And my mom and dad never missed a thing. I mean, the milking of the cows and that, it all got done. And my dad always made sure my brothers had some kind of transportation to go. And so it was just awesome. I felt like I had 4 awesome brothers. When I had my tonsils out in St. George, my mom said the first things I said when I came out of the ether was, well, where are my brothers? And so there was a great love between all of us. And now I'm the only one left in my family of 4 brothers. And it's been a hard thing for me with my husband gone and no brothers. I know many of you heard the story of my dad and my brother. It was such a hard thing. My dad was really sick, and my brother Joe and Alan, and of course, Alan's wife Kay took care of him. I would go up from California as often as I could. My other brothers lived further and would show up, but Alan and Joe had the main thing. I remember the day we said goodbye. Alan was going up to General Conference and was taking his son up that was getting ready to leave on a mission, and then to him to see his brother and sister up there in Provo. And he wasn't feeling well. And when he went to bed that night, he was just so uncomfortable. And Kay dozed off and he passed away. And he was my dad's bishop. And so he had done my dad's funeral. And 1 week later, we buried my brother. And it's still hard for me to talk about and to think about. But he was a wonderful brother and a wonderful bishop. I just feel so blessed to have had my parents and to grow up in Logandale. I think it was when Joanne and I we're both very proud to be from that, and always talked about the valley and what we did. My parents did leave after they were married. They did go to California for a few years. My dad had brothers there that he was able to get jobs from, and then he came back and he worked for my uncle Clarence and Uncle Edwin, and then he bought his own dairy farm, and he ran that for many, many years, and then he sold there and moved down further in Logandale. And after he sold that, my mom and dad moved to Vegas. And it was a hard move for mom to move away from Aunt Amy because they were so close, and we just all lived together. And I remember, and even Aunt Zella had a place by Aunt Amy. And then after then they moved to Vegas and loved that. Aunt Nettie just lived down the street, and Mother and Aunt Nettie just had such a good time together. And she was close then to her other brothers and sisters, and it was a good time for her. And then, you know, time went on, and Dad didn't feel so good. And so they moved back. They did move back then to Overton, but we had his funeral in Logandale where he was a bishop. I had a great childhood growing up. I'm just so proud to be an Earl and to be related to all of you. And to my cousin Janice, I give a shout out to you for being such a good friend to me from the time my husband passed away to all your calls. And I love you, Janice. I miss Joanne, who was one of my closest friends growing up. But life goes on, and I just feel so blessed with my children that love me and take good care of me and try to boss me around, but they're finding that it doesn't work for them. I already know what I want and what I'm going to do, but I love them dearly, and my grandchildren. And I'm just proud to be a member of the Earl family and my Lewis heritage. And I love all of you, and I wish I get to know both of you. But hi to Evie. One of the things that I'll just say this one last story, but one of the things my mother was so happy about when Uncle Donald was born, she was at the right age that was her assignment, was to take care of Uncle Donald. And they had a great relationship, the two of them. And when they moved to Boulder City, and then their children, Evie and Karen and David, would come over to the farm. And that was, Alan and I loved that, having them there. So to all of you, I love you. And I love my parents, and I'm grateful to be their daughter. And I say this humbly in the name of Jesus. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wasn't praying. So.
Thank you, cousin Marianne. I need to add, Marianne's father was the bishop in Logandale. He followed my father when he died. He was the bishop in Logandale. And the first bishop, I think, in Logandale was actually Elmer Bowman. That we'll hear a little bit about the Bowman family when Carol Bowman talks to us. But thanks ever so much. Oh, and Marianne, I want to add one other thing. There were 3 cousins whose middle names were Earl.
I'm going to mention that too, and I forgot.
There was Martin Earl Hardy, and there was Wayne Earl Lewis, and Robert Earl Wells. We
I know that. Thank you for reminding me.
identify each other as the Wells cousins, as the Earl cousins, with the middle name of Earl. Okay, thanks ever so much, Marianne. We love you, and thanks for your great report.
Oh, my daughter wanted me to show you this picture. I don't know if you can see it.
Put it close up.
Close up.
There we go. Oh,
Great.
oh, what a cute picture.
We will next hear from Carol Bowman, representing Aunt Ella Caruth and her beautiful daughters. The Caruth girls were really, they made a wide swath throughout the social of the Las Vegas area in our day. And so where is
Right there.
Oh, okay, great, great. Good to hear from you, Carol. You have the microphone.
Thank you. Does this work?
Yeah,
Yes.
put it really close up to the camera.
Yeah, that's Aunt Ella Caruth who taught me to type.
Oh.
And that is what she's famous for. We're representing Ella Caruth and are proud to do that. We're going to start with one of the granddaughters, Karen Albright Collister, who's going to talk a little bit about her birth and early years. And then I'll talk about her college and some of her later life. Karen, go ahead.
Okay. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. So Grandma Ella was, she had a Nevada beginning. She was born on June 19th, 1901 in the little town of Bunkerville in southern Nevada. She was the 9th child of Joseph Ira Earl and Elithra Callista Bunker. Shortly after her birth, her mother became ill with what was called milk leg, and she died 11 days after Ella's birth. She had been given a name and a blessing when she was 7 or 8 years old. Ella Callista always said that she was pleased to have been given her mother's lovely name, and my granddaughter is named Ella Callista also. In those early pioneer days, the births were not registered, and years later, when she applied for a passport, it was only by the sworn testimony of her sister Lois that she had been present at the birth that enabled Ella to get her passport. Because she lost her mother at such an early age, she was raised in part by her older sister, Lois, and her stepmother, Agnes Viola. Ella was living with her sister Lois in Overton, Nevada, when it came for her to start first grade. And she was sent to school with a little bag of bad-smelling herbs around her neck to keep away disease. The following are some of the memories that Ella have left us with from her pioneer childhood. She said, "Our father got us up early in 1910 and took us outside to see Halley's Comet. My father was a student of the stars and heavens. Little did I know that I would live to see Halley's Comet come around again in 1986. I remember riding in a covered wagon from Bunkerville to Overton. We camped overnight beside a stream, and I remember falling asleep to the river on the trickle over the rocks as I slept. Milking cows was one of my duties. Another duty was riding a horse called Old Kate, bareback, each morning and evening to take the cows down to the Virgin River for a drink. I loved riding Old Kate. I helped extract honey in our honey house in Bunkerville. Sometimes I would be stung, but I loved to chew the beeswax. Ella taught herself to type on a typewriter her father purchased when she was young. And this was a skill that served her well her whole life. And she attended high school in Bunkerville. There were 6 students in her graduating class in 1920. And Ella was the editor of the yearbook. And now Carol can finish.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. It just reminded me of one of the treasures I have is of the yearbook that she published when she was the editor, when she was a senior. And one of the pages in the yearbook, and a lot of you might not believe me, but it's so appropriate to the times we're living in. It says very plainly that Bunkerville was a communist experiment. If you don't believe me, I'll have to show you.
Oh my gosh.
Names and contact.
When her father bought that typewriter, like Karen said, it was just a blessing to my mother because she kind of became his personal secretary, and he wrote a lot of letters to government officials and different people. And mother was his little typist and learned how to type very well. When she got out of high school, she got a job working for the superintendent of schools, and she earned $400. This money allowed her to go to Salt Lake City and start school at the University of Utah. And she lived there in just one little room where she ate and slept and studied. And then she got, excuse me, a job in the typing pool at the university, and they offered her a full-time job, but she was determined to get her education and graduate. When her time at college ended, she found a job teaching in Colville, Utah, and she made $1,450 per year. And that seemed like a huge amount of money to her. She had 3 college friends, and they were young and they loved going to the dances and enjoying life. In the fall of her second year, Ella met a man who would become her husband. His name was Scott Caruth, and they met at a dance. Excuse me. Do you want to read it? I'm losing my voice. I think I'm losing my voice. I'm going to let my son read the rest of this, and then I'll add a little at the end.
Ella and Scott soon married and established their home in Evanston, Wyoming. They soon had 2 daughters, Norma in 1929 and Barbara in 1930. Scott and Ella had their 3rd daughter, my mom, Carol, in 1937. Scott had become ill in 1936, and the local doctor could not diagnose the problem. In May 1937, he was sent to Salt Lake City for an exploratory surgery. But by then, his appendix had burst and caused his death on May 15th, 1937. Ella was a young widow with 3 little girls. Many family members stepped forward to help. She decided to move back to Overton, where many of her family members lived. She soon got a job working in the school office, but she knew she would be better off if she could teach. Maud Frazier was the superintendent of schools at the time, but could not hire Ella because her brother Ira was on the school board. So Miss Frazier advised her to teach in Bunkerville or Overton until she could be hired in Las Vegas. She started teaching in Las Vegas in 1942. Ella was active in the church, and because of her skill in typing and shorthand, she was often asked to use those skills to take minutes or keep records. When her job in Las Vegas started, she was asked to teach math as well as typing and shorthand. Ella was only able to do this because a fellow teacher worked with her each evening, so she would be prepared to teach the subject the next day. During her teacher years, she received many honors, Teachers of the Month by the Rotary Club, and she was featured in the newspaper as the shortest teacher receives highest praise. After her teaching career, she was able to enjoy activities in the Las Vegas Literary Club and Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. In the latter, she carried a sign and marched in front of some local government offices with other women, encouraging the local officials to preserve the Mormon fort here in Vegas. Ella loved to travel and was able to do so quite a bit. Norma's son, Scott, sent us this letter to remind us of her travels. This is from Scott Hurst. Grandma Ella loved her trips, and she always made sure we enjoyed the journey. I must say I was amazed as a youngster that she could travel the world, see the pyramids, and do countless other adventurous things as such a little person like me. She could even drive. Do you remember the special pillows she had on the driver's seat? How did she reach the pillows? We had the exotic experience of riding the train with her to Southern California. Nobody else I knew had that experience. On driving trips, Grandma Ella would make sure we stopped at every historic marker along the way to see what great things had happened there. We made special trips to mysterious places like Pahrump, Nevada, and the Valley of Fire, where Mark Albright and I desperately tried to pry giant lizards out of the wedge safety in the cracks of the rocks. Went to Bunkerville, Overton, we saw it all. Mostly on those trips, I was left with the memory that she loved us grandkids and wanted us to know and cherish the things that had meaning for her. And it worked. Scott Hurst.
Thank you, Tony. I'm sorry, my throat gets a little scratchy, but I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to see some of you. And I remember times going to Overton and Logandale as a girl and enjoying Marianne and my cousins out there. And we also have a kind of an interesting connection to Joanne Wells Tingy, who has just passed away. And so I thought I'd mention it. Joanne Wells and the Bowman family just lived down a lane from each other. As it were, Elizabeth Bowman, my husband's mother, was having her 11th child, who was my husband, at the same time that Aunt Amy was having her first child, and Joanne. And so the doctor got there. He gave the Bowman children a long stick and tied a flag on it and said, when your mother's ready to have this baby, wave the flag and I'll come running. I need to be with Sister Wells because she's having her first baby. So we have that connection. And we have so many connections with Overton and Logandale and Bunkerville, where our family roots are. And I'm so proud to be in the family, and my 4 children and their cousins, the children of Norma and Barbara, honor their heritage. Southern Nevada, Mormon, stalwart pioneer family. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much. A brilliant presentation, and so full of wonderful insights that we all appreciate very much. Thanks for the report on Aunt Ella Caruth and her descendants. We'll now go to the last of today's 4. This will be the report on Aunt Amy Wells. First, I need to say everybody remembers there were the 2 Wells brothers, Edwin Wells and Robert Wells, married 2 of the Earl sisters, Amy and Zella. And the 2 families lived together as the 2nd and 3rd homes on the Wells Ranch. And Uncle Edwin took care of my mother and her children when my father died when I was 6, and Dick was, I guess, 1. And because there's about 5 years that separate us, and we were all raised together. The Wells, the Amy Wells children and the Zella Wells children. So now we'll hear from Catherine on the Amy Wells family? Catherine?
She's showing,
Oh, she has a,
she's got the
Uncle,
screen.
Uncle Sam wanted to say a few words at the beginning. And Sam, are you able to unmute?
Yes. All right.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Samuel Bentley Wells. My mother was Amy Viola Earl Wells. She was the 15th of 19 children of Joseph Ira Earl.
I click on that.
She completed her
Well, it's on the screen.
Go ahead.
She completed her teacher training course in Bunkerville and went on to teach in Las Vegas, Pioche, and Overton. She met Edwin Gordon Wells at the Earl home in Stringtown. They married and she worked on the farm with Edwin, his brother Robert Sr., and his wife, Zella, who was Amy's sister. Amy's children are Joanne Wells Tingy. And by the way, at her funeral yesterday, there were two apostles, the senior president of 70, and two emeritus general authorities. Joanne Wells Tingy, who has 4 children, 26 grandchildren, and 13 great-grandchildren. Edwin Gordon Wells was next. Edwin Gordon Wells Jr., who has 8 children, 31 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. Samuel Bentley Wells has 5 children, 27 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren. Catherine Wells, who served faithfully and never married in this lifetime. We are all covenant born and covenant living people. We are looking forward to our great Earl family reunions on the other side. Now, on to Catherine Wells, Amy Wells's granddaughter, and thanks, she's going to give us a lot of pictures.
Excellent.
Thanks, Uncle Sam. I appreciate that. And I am going to try not to cry. I have the gift of weeping. I appreciated learning last year in Come Follow Me from Marvin Ashton that it's a spiritual gift. So I apologize in advance. I will try to hold it together. Feelings are tender with Joanne's passing. I just want to say what a blessing it is to be part of this extended Earl family, and so happy that we're gathering in this way. My parents growing up would tell stories of our ancestors, and they used to say they weren't great and famous, but they were true and faithful. And I appreciate the faithfulness of this extended family, of all of you. It's just a blessing to be part of you. Okay. See if I can do this while I talk. So as Uncle Sam said, Amy was born in December of 1902. She was the 6th of Viola's Earl's children and the 15th of Joseph Ira's. Okay, below the nose. When Amy was born, I thought this was interesting. Her family was reading the book Little Women, and they'd had 4 girls in a row. They were kind of hoping for a boy, but when she was born, they named her Amy Beth. They wanted to name her Amy Beth because of reading Little Women. And she was blessed at home as Amy Beth Viola Earl, and in church as Amy Viola Earl.
I love that.
Born in Bunkerville. And here's a picture of her with some of her sisters, Viola's daughters. As previous cousins have mentioned, the Earl children were taught to work hard and to value education, and Amy was no different. She grew up drying figs and raisins, doing housework, getting the cows for milking, tromping hay, and doing yucky, sticky jobs in the honey house for her beekeeping father. And she often prayed as a girl that she would not marry a beekeeper or a farmer. Now, part of that prayer was answered and the other part was not. Like her father, Amy became a poet and wrote many beautiful poems and funny poems for family members and others. She loved school and especially the Friday night dances. She made great friends in Bunkerville, so it was hard for her when the family moved to Overton during her high school years. However, in Overton, she loved the choir and music classes taught by Mr. Rowe, and she also loved home economics class, making patterns and sewing dresses. The family, however, didn't always love the mess that she made when she was sewing. There was no money for her to go to college after high school. However, fortunately, after a little while, she learned that a teacher normal school was being established in Bunkerville with space for just 8 students to enroll. She was one of them. So for that year, she stayed with Aunt Winona and slept on a cot and earned her teaching certificate. And for the next 9 or 10 years, she spent winters teaching school in various places and summers taking college courses at different universities to update her teaching certificate, including the University of Utah, Utah State, San Francisco State, and BYU, attaining the equivalent of 3 years of college during those summers. She taught for 2 years in Price, Utah, and then moved closer to home and taught in Panaca for a year, then 3 years in Caliente, Nevada, and then in Las Vegas for a couple of years. She was a wonderful teacher. And just a little tidbit, when she worked in Price, Utah, she earned $90 a month and sent a lot of that money home to her father to pay for her father's car. He didn't let the girls drive the car at first, but once he saw that she was driving her boyfriend's car and that she had helped pay for the car, he let her drive his car. I thought that was kind of fun. In 1931, in the summer, Edwin Wells from Logandale saw Amy at a dance and asked her to dance a few times. As has been mentioned by Robert, Edwin's brother, Robert Sr., who had married Amy's sister, Zella Earl, 5 years earlier, invited Edwin to come to the Earl home the next Sunday afternoon, and he came. There was a circle of young people on the lawn with a space next to Amy. As he sat down and leaned back, his hand accidentally went over the top of her hand, and he said that a warm feeling went up his arm. She didn't move her hand, and neither did he. They had a few dates. And then he asked her to marry him later that summer. She did have a contract to teach school in Las Vegas that year, so she had to go back to Vegas, but he visited her a few times that winter. And they were married in June of 1932 in the St. George Temple. Here's a picture from their honeymoon. Aren't they a beautiful couple?
So beautiful.
Amy and Edwin had 4 children, as Sam mentioned already. Joanne, born in 1933, Gordon in 1935, Sam in 38, and Kathy in 42. And like all of us, they experienced great joy and also adversity as they raised their family. Just a couple of examples. When the kids were little, Gordon lost an eye in a slingshot accident when he was 5. Kathy fell into a concrete basement and suffered a brain injury when she was 2. She also had pneumonia and rheumatic fever. But in all the challenges of life, Amy and Edwin chose to allow adversity to bring them closer to the Lord. Together, Edwin and Robert farmed as the Wells brothers, and Robert and Zella, his wife, and their boys lived across the street from this home that's pictured here that Amy and Edwin built. There's a picture of Joanne and Gordon with Amy in their yard. And here's some pictures on the farm. In the top right, you see this is the beech seed thresher or harvester that they invented. They invented this, and men came from out of state, Idaho and other Western areas to look at this invention and check it out. Sadly, they did not get a patent, so this idea was copied by other people. But it was something they came up with. And one of their major crops was tomato plants. This picture on the bottom right, for 40 years on the farm, they sold tomato plants that they shipped out. And let's see, and here's a picture of them on the front porch. As I think was mentioned earlier, tragically, Edwin's brother Robert died in 1934. This was just 2 years after Edwin and Amy had married. And Edwin took over running the Wells Brothers farm. And he was in many ways like a father to Robert and Richard until Zella remarried. Raised together on the farm, the children were very close. And these were the pictures I found of the kids.
How cute, that's you.
The farm's major crops included tomato plants, as I mentioned, sugar beet seed, asparagus, cantaloupes, green onions, and radishes, all of which they shipped to market. They also ran a small dairy of 35 to 40 milking cows with about 15 dry cows and calves. Amy taught her children to pray and trust in the Lord. Once embers from a trash fire on the property blew into the packing shed and the adjoining barn that housed the tractors. And they were they were in town. When they returned from town, the packing shed and the tractor tires were all on fire. They needed the hay in that barn to feed their cows over the winter, and they needed the tractors to work their farm. In spite of Amy's protest, Edwin got on each tractor and drove them quickly into the ditch to put out the fire on the tires. Neighbors came to try to pour water onto the fire, but made slow progress. Amy and Gordon, who was 5, ran to the house to check on the baby. And Gordon said, "Mother, let's pray that God will send rain to put out the fire." And Amy said, "Yes, Gordon, let's pray." And so they knelt beside the bed and prayed for rain. There had not been a cloud in the sky, but rain came and soaked the length of their property, putting out the fire. It was a miracle that has strengthened our family's faith that God hears and answers prayers. Amy's husband, Edwin, was known for his honesty, his devotion to the Lord and his church, his hard work as a farmer, and service to the community. Amy supported him in all that he did, whether it was church service as a bishop, a member of the state presidency, state mission president, or as president of the Moapa Irrigation Company or chairman of the hospital board. He was often gone all day long on Sundays for many years in his service and the church. And Amy told the children, "We are so blessed to have a husband and father who is worthy to serve the Lord." Amy likewise served and led in the church. She taught Book of Mormon classes in Sunday school and Relief Society for many years and served as a Stake Relief Society theology board member, traveling throughout the Moapa stake to visit various congregations. She also had a sparkling sense of humor and a quick wit. For example, when Sam was little, he sometimes got into mischief. And once exasperated, Amy said, "Sammy, you are a rapscallion." And he said, "That isn't even a word." And she said, "It is too, it's in the dictionary." And he said, "I'm gonna go see if it is." When he opened the dictionary to the letter R, he saw that she had written in the margin, "Samuel Wells is a rapscallion."
You'll have to tell me that later.
Yeah.
The sugar beet seed had been a large cash crop on their farm. So when the Utah-Idaho Sugar Company stopped buying from the Wells and the 4 children had all graduated from high school, Amy returned to teaching to help pay for missions, college, and to help pay off the farm loan. She taught kindergarten in Moapa Valley for 10 years, from 1954 to 65, and loved it. And she was loved by her students and their parents. She had a great love as well for her family. This is a picture from a family gathering in 1964 with many of her siblings before they moved north. In 1965, they decided to sell the farm and to move to Salt Lake City to serve in the temple. They bought a 4-plex downtown near the temple. This is a picture of it. And they served 3 days a week in the temple. Edwin became a sealer. He actually sealed my parents. And Amy was an ordnance worker. And Gordon my dad lived in one of these apartments when he was practicing law. And my mother remembers meeting Gordon's parents for the first time in this home. She remembers Amy was sitting in Edwin's lap in her curlers as they read the scriptures together. And they did this all their lives. I think many of us who know them can remember that, have that image of them studying with her sitting in his lap or next to him. Too much ice and snow in Salt Lake sent them back to St. George to live in St. George, back south, in 1969. They built their dream home on a lot near the temple. You can see in this middle picture here, the temple was just up the street just a bit. They had a beautiful garden in the back, and she just had beautiful landscaping. Amy enjoyed her garden and often took vegetables or bread to people to minister to them. And the tradition of gardening and ministering through the fruits of that effort has continued with many of us who are her posterity. In 1975, they left their home to serve a senior mission in Tulsa, Oklahoma, helping strengthen the church in 2 different cities. At that particular time in 75, all of their children were also missionaries. Sam and Kathy were stake missionaries. Gordon was stake mission president, and Joanne was a mission leader in Sydney, Australia, with her husband, Earl. As they returned back to St. George, they served again in the St. George Temple together until 1982. And they loved that service. We gathered for some family reunions during that time that they lived in St. George. And they enjoyed visiting and being visited by their children and grandchildren. And we grandchildren have fond memories of that St. George house with their great library of children's books, their beautiful garden out back, grandma's delicious rolls and boiled cake, and sleeping out in the screen porch. Here's a picture of another gathering. This was on the occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary in 1982. And we're just missing 4 of the grandchildren, 3 of the older grandchildren and 1, the youngest who hadn't been born yet.
Natalie wasn't there.
Grandma was a wonderful grandmother to her grandchildren. When she would visit, she spent time reading to us. She was such a wonderful educator, and she introduced us to many wonderful books. She also helped with mending clothing, sewing quilts. She sewed pajamas and nightgowns for us for gifts. We loved her pomegranate salad, her carrot pudding with lemon sauce, and other delicious recipes. Meanwhile, Grandpa Edwin told stories, stole food off our plates at dinner, and showed us where he was missing part of a finger from an accident with one of the machines on the farm. Oh, and I wanted to mention that Grandma gave delightful books to us as gifts. She would have read the book and talked and would share thoughts at the beginning. And it's such a treasure. We have many of these books that she would have given us as gifts. Grandma Amy was a lifelong learner, always reading and collecting both inspiring and funny quotes and articles, many of which she would send in letters to children and grandchildren and collect. Here's some of her handwritten quotes about marriage and some of the other quotes that she clipped. She and Edwin were always reading together. Again, loved learning. They would be reading the scriptures or read the newspaper or other good books, always snuggling close on the couch or with Grandma in his lap. One of the things that we love about Grandma Amy and Edwin was their devotion to each other. They truly loved each other, and it was evident in the way that they held hands and stood close. They just truly loved each other, and it was a great example for their posterity. They had a love for each other, of learning truth, and of the gospel of Jesus Christ. After Edwin's passing in 1995 at age 93, Amy lived with Joanne in Bountiful for 6 more years. During those years, I was in college and had the opportunity to drive up from Provo to attend the Bountiful Temple with her. She loved serving the Lord, even when it was difficult. She missed Edwin terribly after he passed and longed to be reunited with him. And they were reunited with her passing in October of 2001 at the age of 98. Amy was a great woman, a woman of great faith in the Savior, devotion to his gospel and her family, a gifted educator, both at church and the school and at home, teaching us by word and example. And I love and appreciate her, and I'm grateful to be among her posterity.
Thank you ever so much. This has been a great presentation. Thanks for remembering Aunt Amy and Uncle Edwin and their family in such a beautiful way with pictures illustrated and well told. Thank you ever so much. We
Kat,
have heard today.
Can I add something real quick? So Aunt Amy and Uncle Edwin they felt like grandparents to me. And since I never knew my grandfather, Uncle Edwin, that's who I knew as a grandfather, in addition to Zella's second husband, who we called Daddy Joe. But one of my favorite memories of Amy and Edwin was when I was probably 7 or 8. And that was the first time that I had heard that Edwin and Robert were brothers. And I knew that Amy and Zella were sisters. So I said to them, "Oh, you're related." They thought that was the funniest thing. They just laughed and said, "Yes, we're married." And I said, "No, that's not what I meant. I meant, and they just thought it was funny. But anyway, I adored them both.
Thanks, Elaine. We have had a beautiful presentation on Uncle Marion's family, Aunt Melba's family, Aunt Ella's family, and Aunt Amy's family. Next, on the next Zoom conference will be July 24th, 1 year since we started the Earl family Zooms. And the last 4 descendants of the 16 living descendants of the grandfather Earl family, the next meeting will be dedicated to Zella, my mother, and Dick's mother, Aunt Nell Benson, Uncle Rulon Earl, and Uncle J. Donald Earl and their families. And we will have those presentations on schedule. These have been classical, marvelous, great presentations, and full of warm, cozy feelings and lots of love. The family, Earl family, is a great family, and the traditions are alive and well, and the stories are funny and sweet and inspiring, and it's a great tradition that we share. So thanks to all of you who have contributed, who have spent time thinking about this. And the more we think and the more we learn and the more we love each other, the better. Let's keep the tradition going. And we're looking forward to the 24th of July. And we'll then decide what we're going to do to follow up on this fabulous tradition. I want to thank Elaine for the brains behind the Zoom system. I do not understand it, and I thank Elaine. Now, I wanted to present Elaine's
Let me call them.
celebrity kids, Jonas, her son, and Michaela, his
I'll see if they can come up.
special bride that you've all heard about, Olympus athlete,
Olympics.
and charming girl. And I don't know what happened to them, but they were wandering around for a while.
They'll come up soon.
Okay, so anyway, thanks to all of you, and we will continue to visit. We'll keep the camera open for a little while. I don't know how long.
I'll just keep this on for as long as people want to stay on. So stay on and visit, hop off, whatever you need to do. But it's just so fun to have you all together. We have 58. We had 64 participants at one time. But we'll keep doing this. I love getting to know most of you. I've heard from so many of you. Thank you to all those who have given me information. And if you look at my last email, and if you see your name there, or if you see your name of anyone who you're close to and who you have information for, please let me know, because I really want to have everyone's information. But anyway, thanks to all of you so much for your stories and sharing the pictures and everything. It's just been awesome. And
I want
Charlene's
to
here.
take one moment and switch the camera here slightly. To behind my right shoulder is my dear wife, Helen. Honey, smile and say hello to the people.
Hello, I've certainly enjoyed all of this, and I'm looking forward to the next presentation.
Thanks.
I
That will
just
be the
would
last of
love
the
to meet
formal
you
16
in person.
presentations, but we'll continue the tradition. We have to go on with this. And so are the kids going to come up?
Well, let's see. Michaela is finishing
Oh.
an assignment.
Here's another celebrity. Charlene just came on. Yes, we insist. Charlene, you have to come over. Charlene has been traveling to Ireland, recently returned because one of her daughters got her master's degree in Ireland. Charlene, come on camera.
Oh, gosh, Dad.
Here's
Hi, everybody.
Charlene.
Sorry, I was in transit. Great to see all your faces. But I
Anything
got to
else to
listen in.
say?
No, I was listening in. It was really awesome.
Good, thank you.
I remember Aunt Amy and Uncle Edwin especially. And
Yeah,
Yep.
that double cousin reaction is kind of unique. I don't know of anyone else that has
Yeah.
two brothers that married
I
two
know.
sisters.
Well, there were in your family, there's two others who married, two Earls who married two other siblings.
Still down there.
Yeah, because that's her daughter. You said.
I don't
Yeah.
remember who that would be,
Hmm.
but anyway,
Have to
how?
look and see.
Charlene, what are you doing?
Oh, just
What's,
working.
what's your new business
Good to
position?
see all of you.
Explain.
I'm working with Mountain America Credit Union. For those of you who might be in Utah, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Idaho, or Montana.
What's your title?
I'm Senior Vice President over Public Relations and Government Relations and Organizational Communications.
And in some way, you are a lady banker.
Oh, and Dad is so excited about that, right? I have nothing to do with the finance part, nothing. But I'm proud to work in a financial institution and carry on Dad's tradition.
Okay.
Now, Ira Earl married Leviza Levitt, who is the sister of Bertie Ann Levitt. So Ken and Ira married Levitt's sisters.
I knew that
Wow.
the first three Earl children that married over in Bunkerville married Levitts.
Hmm.
And so there were three. And then grandfather decided, some say, my mother says, he decided that there were too many Levitts in the family. And so he moved to Overton. And she said, your grandfather will raise his eyebrows a little bit when he hears that you married a Levitt. So anyway,
Oh, I wanted to ask, does anyone have access to, I'm not going to put my face there, to the recording of Joanne's funeral? Because a lot of people wanted to see it.
now
Who was in charge of the funeral?
I can, tomorrow, I will talk to the Russin brothers mortuary. I know people there,
Okay.
but assuming that they don't have it, I don't know.
They would have it.
Who
would have
in-
it.
Would they have
Yeah.
it?
They need to provide it to the family.
Okay, let's hope that they're the ones that did the recording. Because I would like to have a copy of that.
Mhm.
I saw them recording it yesterday. I know it's been recorded.
You doing
Back, is your back doing?
So I know it was a recording.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll try to find out, and then I'll send everyone the link.
Yeah, don't grip.
It's okay. I don't need to be on.
And Helen, did you
Did
get in
we
the
see,
picture?
did we see Mom too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like this.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, I don't know how we chat, visit.
We just let people who want to get off, and those who want to stay on, you can go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Who's saying hello down here?
Oh, well, that's Edwin Wells. There we go.
Yeah,
Let-
okay.
Go ahead and unmute
He
yourself.
carries a good
Whoops.
name.
Hello,
Hi.
hi, I'm in Idaho.
Oh, so
Pretty
good to
good.
have you on.
Now, Sam Wells and Pat are up there in the top right or left-hand corner.
Yes.
They are traditional people from the Overton, Logandale Valley.
Is that Pat?
That family were made people.
I haven't seen
Lion
her.
family in the Moapa Valley were very famous. And so Sam and Pat carry multiple traditions, all connected to the valley and the grocery store that they had, and they owned the telephone system. It was a
Oh,
private
wow.
telephone system that I remember the old days with rings. You would crank the telephone bell.
Yeah.
And, oh, here's one
Oh,
celebrity
here we
in the
go.
family. This is Michaela.
You sit over there.
Come on camera, please. She is our Olympic celebrity and famous athlete.
Explain,
And,
she married my son.
who's-
Just explain the relation. This is your granddaughter.
This is our granddaughter. And say something.
Hey, nice to meet everybody.
This is my dad's extended family.
We're,
Oh, so cool.
we're proud of you and happy you joined the family by marrying Jonas.
Thanks. I'm excited I joined the family too.
How
Some great
tall are
people.
you?
I'm 5 foot,
She's 5 feet tall. How tall is Jonas?
6'7".
Oh,
He got Uncle Edwin.
Where's Jonah?
We enjoy the contrast there. It's funny and we love you.
Thanks. Love you guys too. You're the best.
what was your sport?
It's for you guys.
What was your sport?
Gymnastics.
Oh,
He was the Olympic silver medalist this last summer Olympics. She won the
Oh,
silver
wow.
medal in vault. To a real-
Involved.
Congratulations.
wow.
We have a granddaughter that's on the BYU gymnastics team.
Oh, no way. I did gymnastics at the U.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Boy, they took third this year in the nation.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yep. They did awesome.
They just have the best team always.
I know we are pretty good, but BYU's doing better, so that's good.
Well, we hope.
That's-
Melissa just tore her shoulder.
Dick,
Oh, no.
why don't you say hello? I want my brother Richard to say hello. He will be making the presentation 3 months from now on our mother Zella and her descendant.
I think it's going to be July 24th.
Oh, really?
Hello, everyone. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're on camera and well, on
All
sound.
right. I need to just be very brief because I'm on my way to another family gathering of, we have a brand new granddaughter that has been born and we want to get together for that. I just want to mention that there are some amazing stories that were not related, but are still part of the family traditions. For Uncle Marion financed the education of several of our cousins. He was so generous. And for the widows, his sisters, he looked after them and took care of them and financed some of their obligations. He was as generous as any man could possibly be. He was wonderful, as well as were each of the other sisters that were mentioned and gave the histories. We were raised with that, with actually all of them. I remember stories of Aunt Melba, Aunt Ella Caruth, as well as Aunt Amy. Those are the sweetest memories that could possibly be. And they're all so wonderful, brilliant people, bright and capable, as well as generous and faithful in the gospel. So I'm on my way to another gathering, but I'm so thankful for my Earl heritage. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dick. Thanks ever so much for that report. I'm going to switch the camera here. No, I want the two of you to stand side by side.
I don't know if we
Can you do that?
I don't know
Okay,
if the camera can see it.
yeah. Let's see.
Whoa.
I don't know if anyone can see that.
Yeah.
The contrast there.
Yeah. How did they meet?
Well, okay.
They want to know how you met.
We met through a mutual friend in college.
Uh-huh. At the U, I guess.
Yep.
But Jonas, so we did long distance, kind of.
Oh. Whatever works.
It worked.
Worked it out. It was nice to meet you all.
Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks for being willing to be greeted as celebrities.
Oh, of course.
Okay, let's see. Helen, do you want to say something else?
I just have really enjoyed this, and I'm just sitting here waiting to do the same thing with my family, who happens to be the Scousons.
Oh.
Balser family. And
From the Mexican colonies.
Mexican colonies, that's right.
There are a lot of stories there, going back to Pancho Villa and the exciting adventures. Let's
Can
see,
I
anyone else want to be on camera?
I just want to ask her a question. Is she related to Alice and Joe Skousen, who lived in Overton?
What?
Alice and Joe Skousen.
I don't know them personally.
Uh-huh.
Skousen family is a big band family.
Yeah.
I will keep that in mind. The next time we have some Skousens reunions, and I will ask.
All right.
Good question. Any other questions?
Yes, Elaine, are you going to be able to send this recording, like a link to it out perhaps? There's some family members that can be here.
Yeah. Yeah, there were definitely some who couldn't make it. So yeah, I will be sending the link to this. I've recorded it. In fact, it's still recording apparently.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, still recording. I think I'll just pause. I'll stop it now.